I got this big, long biography of him that I'm going to save you that because I think he's also going to share some of that experience with you. But he began here as a youth pastor, as Dan said, and while here in this place, he received a call to enter into ministry. And from that time forward, he has served many churches in our North Georgia Conference, including Hickory Flat United Methodist Church, which is a church, the second church that I was appointed to, straight out of seminary. And but it's okay because Wayne got them all straightened out after that. And most currently, he is living up in Woodstock and serving a church up in there, even in retirement. There's no, is there such a thing as a retired pastor?
I hope not.
That's right up there. That's right up there with a part-time pastor. Just not such thing. But we're grateful that he is here, and we'll be bringing the message of the day. With that, I'll turn things over to Reverend Smith.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And I want to say to y'all what an honor it is and a real privilege to be invited to come back to my home church and to be able to preach and celebrate homecoming with you today. I'm just thrilled about it. I couldn't wait to get here. In fact, I was so excited about coming back to Winterville that I came here 2 Sundays ago on the first Sunday of September. Did y'all know that? Anybody? I didn't know what date it was, and I had it in my head that it was the first Sunday of September. So I showed up over here at about 11:15 on the first Sunday, and Miss Tucker met me back there and said, welcome. And I said, was I supposed to have been here at 8:30 this morning for the early service? And she said, homecoming's not for 2 more weeks. And she invited me to come in and worship with y'all. But my mother lives over in an assisted living place, Morningside, over across from Cedar Shoals High School. And I had not seen her in a long time. And I said, I appreciate the invitation, but I'm going to go see my mama. And that's what I did, and I took her out to lunch that day, and we had a great visit. And so it was not in any way a wasted trip. In fact, maybe the Lord was kind of helping me along by giving me an opportunity to kind of spend some time with my mama. And I want to thank Mama for being here today. Mama and Wesley and Gay, my brother and sister are here with her. And this is not the first time that Mama has come to hear me preach. She and Daddy never felt comfortable visiting me in the church where I was serving to come listen to me preach, especially if I hadn't been there for very long. And so she and Daddy would give me like a year in a place before they would come visit with us and worship with us on a Sunday morning. And there was one appointment I had several years ago when they came to visit, and Mom came in the front door of the church, and an usher started to seat her and was going to put her about midway in the sanctuary. And Mama turned to the usher and said, I always sit on the very front row, and I want to sit right down where I can see and hear the preacher real well. And the usher said, ma'am, I hate to tell you this, but this preacher's been here for a year, and he's pretty boring. He's dry as dust, and I don't really think you want to sit on the front row. And she said, young man, I'll have you know that I sit on the front row every Sunday, and I will sit on the front row today. So he said, yes, ma'am. And he took her down to the front row and sat down, and she looked at him and said, young man, do you know who I am? And he said, no. And she said, I happen to be the mother of Reverend Wayne Smith. And the man just, he was backing up. he said, I am so sorry, man. I did not in any way mean to offend you. And he said, do you know who I am? And she said, I have no idea who you are. And he said, good. And he took off through the side door and it was gone. And Mama, I'm glad you're here, even if you're sitting in the back today. That's a good deal. Thank you. And I see that y'all installed the clock back there because y'all heard I was coming. I'm sure of that. And I'm glad that that is there. Several years ago, I had a friend, another preacher friend, who called me up and he wanted to do a pulpit exchange one Sunday. And he said, this is going to be the Sunday when we do our financial commitments, our pledging to the church for our giving for the coming year. And he said, if you'll come preach for me, I will preach for you on that same Sunday. And he said, I've got 6 different things that I want you to say in your sermon. And he gave me the sermon. And so I showed up on that day and I was prepared to preach Richard's sermon and cover his 6 points. And they had food waiting, and they had so many, activities and special things planned for later in the service or before the preaching got started. And it was like 10 minutes till 12 when they invited me to stand up and preach. I'm standing there with this sermon that Richard gave me, and it was going to take at least 25 minutes to do that sermon. And I said, listen, I've seen the food in the fellowship hall, and I know that y'all are all wanting to get over there and eat, but I've only got 8 minutes to go, and I've got this sermon that I've got to deliver. And there was a big man sitting right on the front row, and he said, preacher, you take all the time you want. It doesn't matter about the time. Don't worry about that. You just preach the sermon that we need to hear today. And I thought, man, that's great. And I said, thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. He said, the rest of us are going to go eat. and that really happened. I mean, that one was a true story. But I'm delighted to be here today. I've been thinking about y'all. I've been thinking about the time that I spent here in Winterville. I'm thinking about things that happened while I was here. And what a wonderful congregation you have always been. I was here, I came at Christmas time, 1979, and I spent the year of 1980 here. I was teaching school when I came, and I applied to seminary, and when school started in the fall, instead of teaching again that year, I went to seminary, and I've been serving in the church ever since. And I am so happy to have made that decision here with your support and with your help and your encouragement along the way. And the scripture I've chosen for today is a scripture that is really significant for me and my time here at Winterville United Methodist Church. And this reading is from Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 23. I looked at the bulletin, and it says Luke 25. I'm sure that that's what I sent in when I turned in that scripture reading. But you know what? Luke doesn't have a chapter 25. So, it's going to be Matthew 25, 14 through 23. For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. And then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. And then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Amen. The reason that this scripture is so important to me is because when I came here to be the youth director, Bob Murphy was the pastor at the time. And I had an interview with Bob Murphy. That interview had been arranged by Wesley Whitehead. And Wesley Whitehead called me up one day and he said, Can I come talk to you? And I said, Sure, come on. He said, Will you come sit in my car out in the driveway and talk to me? And I said, Yeah. I thought, that's weird. And anyway, he came over and I saw the headlights in the driveway. And so I went out and sat in his car so that we could talk. And Wesley said, We have an opening on our church staff for a part-time youth director. And he said, I know that you are going and working at the Baptist church as a volunteer, but he said, I know that in your heart you're a Methodist. And he said, I think that you would be a great person to have come in and become the youth director at Winterville Methodist Church. Would you be willing to consider doing that? And what Wesley didn't know was that I was at that time struggling with the call to the ordained ministry. And in fact, I had had that call when I was like a freshman or sophomore in college. And instead of making a decision to go into the ministry when I was in the first couple of years of my college time, I was too scared, first of all, to try to stand up and speak in front of people. That just wasn't something I could see myself doing. And for another thing, I had other activities that I wanted to pursue on the weekends and during the summers and everything. And so I said, okay, God, here's the deal. Take it or leave it. I will be a teacher, and I will serve you and let my teaching and working with young kids, that can be my ministry, and I'll still have my weekends and summers free to do whatever I want to do. And that's the way that I will respond to this call that I'm feeling. And it was as if God said to me, okay, if that's what you want to do, then go for it, and we'll see how that works out. And so I did. I became a teacher. I taught for 7 years in the Clark County school system, and I was a special ed teacher. And after 7 years, well, first of all, during the first part of those years, I quit going to church altogether. I mean, the deal that I offered God, I kind of forgot about. I didn't serve God through the school year nearly like I thought I would. But anyway, I really never had a sense of satisfaction with teaching. And we had a son who was 1 year old, Kelly, and Mary Elaine had started going back to church, and she wanted me to go with her. And so I said, okay, he needs to grow up in the church the way that I did. So we started going back to church, and lo and behold, the call came back, and I was finding myself, Wayne, you need to go into the ordained ministry and serve God full time. And I just could not believe that God was calling me again in that way. So when I interviewed with Bob Murphy, I told him about this, And I said, listen, if I take the position with you, and if I come on staff, I really want to explore ordained ministry, and I want to use this as a way of testing the waters and seeing if this is really a genuine calling from God or if it's just something that I'm imagining. And Bob said, hey, that's perfect. That's not a problem at all. Come on. So I came on staff here, and as I said a few minutes ago, I quit teaching, and I worked full-time here in the church over the summer. But when school started in the fall, I enrolled at Candler School of Theology at Emory University, and I've never looked back. And I'm thankful that things worked the way that they did. And y'all were a part of that decision-making process for me. I don't know if you're aware of the requirements to become a certified candidate for ordination in the United Methodist Church, but two of the very first steps, the first one is that you have to sit down and be interviewed by the church's, your local church's, pastor-parish relations committee. And so I told Bob I'm ready to do that step. And so he called a meeting of the PPR committee, and we sat down, and they were able to ask me any question they wanted to ask, and I gave them the most honest answers that I was able to give. And at the end of the time, Bob said, okay, now that we've interviewed Wayne, we need to either approve him or disapprove him. If we disapprove, it'll be the end of his candidacy process. If we approve him, then we recommend him to the charge conference, and he will be interviewed by them, and there he'll get the approval of the whole church. And so they said, all right, here we go. And Bob said, let me say a prayer. And in his prayer, this is the only part of the prayer that I remember, but in his prayer, Bob said for me, he said, Lord, please bless Wayne as he seeks to follow your will and as he seeks to understand your will for his life. And he said, I pray, Lord, that when Wayne comes to the end of his ministry within the church, and that if that is years and years and years down the road, I pray that he will hear you say to him, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. And I have never forgotten that prayer. Bob prayed that prayer for me and the SPR committee in 1980. And he repeated that prayer again when I was interviewed by the charge conference. And thank goodness the charge conference didn't ask me any questions. And so I felt like I kind of had a free pass there, but no questions were asked, and I was able to get the approval of the church. When it came time for charge conference that fall, the district superintendent came to me. I was already in seminary, and he said, I've got a student appointment that has opened up in Bostwick, and I'd like for you to take that appointment beginning January 1st if you're willing to do that. And it was like that was an answer to prayer, because we had kind of come to